Extinction didn't erase their terror. It sealed their legacy in blood and bone. For over 600 million years, Earth served as a proving ground for predators, with nature constantly the rules of survival. Imagine a world filled with dense jungles, open oceans, and skies teeming with predators. Prehistoric life wasn't just about survival, it was about dominance. When the first Smilodon remains were unearthed, paleontologists didn't immediately recognize them as belonging to a cat. Based on some isolated cheek teeth that bore an uncanny resemblance to those of modern hyenas, they initially dubbed this new find Hyena neogaea. But within a couple of years, a flood of new fossils emerged. Suddenly, scientists weren't just looking at a few teeth, but a veritable jigsaw puzzle of prehistoric proportions. Foot bones, skull fragments, and those iconic canines, which seemed almost comically oversized for any mouth, painted a very different picture. It became clear that this was no hyena. Instead, they were dealing with a completely new genus of felid, one that was not only massive in size, but also built like a prehistoric tank. This feline was far more robust than any modern cat, a true heavyweight champion of the Ice Age. In light of this revelation, a new name was in order. Thus, Smilodon Populator was born. Smilodon meaning knife tooth, and Populator roughly translating to destroyer or he who brings devastation. It's a fitting moniker for a predator that redefined what it meant to be lethal. With its new identity established, the scientific community dove headfirst into unraveling the Smilodon's family tree. This quest for understanding continues to this day, with researchers currently placing our knife-toothed friend in the extinct subfamily Misidentified. This subfamily is home to most of what we colloquially call saber-toothed tigers, though saber-toothed cats is more accurate since these ancient felines aren't closely related to modern tigers or any living cats for that matter. In fact, their closest living relatives might be members of the felini subfamily, which includes our domestic kitties. Within the Misidentified, Smilodon found itself in an even more exclusive club, the Smilodonti, or as some paleontologists like to call them, the dirk-toothed cats. This group is pretty exclusive, with only 5 known genera calling it home. But what Smilodonti lacks in diversity, it makes up for in star power, thanks to Smilodon. As research progressed, scientists discovered that Smilodon wasn't a lone standout. It was more like a prehistoric trio, with 3 distinct members, each bringing something unique to the table: S. Gracilis, S. Fatalis, and S. Populator. Now, if you found yourself face to face with any of these species, you probably wouldn't be too concerned with which one was about to turn you into lunch, but they did have their differences. First up, we have AS. Gracilis, the elder statesman of the group. This OG appeared in North America about 2.5 million years ago, descending from an even older genus called Meganterion. Next came S. Fatalis, strutting onto the scene roughly 1 million years later. Last, but certainly not least, S. Populator made its grand entrance about 600,000 years after Fatalis, fashionably late to the Ice Age party. S. Gracilis, while no slouch in the size department, was the runt of the litter, tipping the scales at about the same weight as a modern jaguar. S. Fatalis, living up to its name, was a step up in the terror department, matching an African lion in size, but packing on extra muscle like a feline bodybuilder. We're talking about 280 kilos or 620 pounds of prehistoric fury. That's on par with the largest tigers roaming the earth today, but S. Populator dominated them all. This behemoth pushed the boundaries of feline physiology, with the largest known specimens estimated to have weighed in at a jaw-dropping 470 kilos or 1,040 pounds. To put that in perspective, that's about the same as a medium-sized polar bear. Interestingly, unlike many modern big cats, Smilodons didn't seem to be too hung up on gender norms. Studies suggest that there wasn't a significant size difference between males and females, a trait scientists call low sexual dimorphism. In practical terms, this means that regardless of whether you were facing a male Smilodon or a female Smilodon, you were in equal danger. I've always been fascinated by the sheer audacity of nature's designs. Take Smilodon, for instance. It wasn't just a big cat, it was built like a prehistoric tank. And these creatures were in for equally big trouble. The Smilodon's heel bone was a marvel, so robust and elongated that some paleontologists even speculate these Ice Age acrobats could have outleaped modern lions. I read that they could clear heights of 15 feet, or 4.5 meters. Imagine a cat the size of a bear, capable of leaping over a one-story building, but it wasn't just fancy footwork. Smilodon's forelimbs were something else entirely. They were about 20% thicker than you'd expect for a cat of its size, giving it incredible strength, even surpassing the larger American lion. And at the end of those muscular arms, it was armed with fully retractable claws, razor-sharp and curved, proportionally enormous, even for a cat of its size. Twice the size of a Siberian tiger's, and even longer than those of a Kodiak brown bear, an animal that could weigh twice as much. These weren't just weapons, they were nature's grappling hooks, perfect for latching on to large prey. But let's be real, when we think of Smilodon, it's not its vertical leap or powerful forearms that come to mind. It's all about those teeth, those iconic, impossibly long canines that have captured imaginations for generations. Saber-Tooth weren't unique to Smilodon. Nature has played around with this dental design in various mammals, and even some non-mammals throughout history, but Smilodon perfected it, taking the concept to a new level. What made Smilodon's fangs special wasn't just their presence, but their sheer length. They protruded well beyond the lower jaw, a feature uncommon even among other saber-toothed cats. Up to 8 inches or 20 centimeters long, longer than many modern kitchen knives. Precision instruments of prehistoric destruction, shaped like deadly daggers with sharp points and smooth, narrow sides, designed to pierce deep into flesh. Here's where things get interesting. You'd expect a predator with teeth like that to have a powerful bite to match, but studies have shown that Smilodon's bite was relatively weak, only about 1,000 newtons, which is 4 times weaker than a modern lion's. So, how did it kill? Well, that's been a subject of much debate among paleontologists. One popular theory suggests that Smilodon was the original ambush predator, hidden in dense vegetation, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, with a powerful leap, it pounces on its unsuspecting prey. Using those muscular forelimbs and grappling hook claws, it pins down its victim, sinking its saber teeth into the prey's soft underbelly, causing massive internal damage and blood loss. But not everyone buys this gut-stabbing hypothesis. Many researchers favor a different but equally grim scenario. They proposed that Smilodon used its powerful build to quickly overpower its prey, then delivered a precise, lethal bite to the throat. This would have caused severe blood loss and suffocation, a quick, if not particularly pleasant end for its unfortunate victims. Adding fuel to this theory is the discovery that Smilodon could open its jaw to an incredible 120 degrees. That's almost twice as wide as a human can manage. With a gape like that, pretty much every neck in the Ice Age would have been fair game. But Smilodon wasn't just brawn and teeth. Brain scans of Smilodon skulls suggest that these prehistoric predators had excellent coordination, sharp hearing, and top-notch vision. Their eye socket shape hints at binocular vision, giving them the depth perception needed to judge distances accurately, crucial for a predator that relied on ambush tactics. And if all that wasn't enough, they were fast too. Many Smilodon fossils show trauma to their sternums, the kind of injury you'd expect from high-speed collisions. This suggests that not only were they quick on their feet, but they were also willing to risk life and limb, or at least a bruised chest, in pursuit of their next meal. Smilodon's unique traits, along with its powerful weaponry, made it a versatile hunter, capable of taking down a wide variety of megafaunal prey. The specific animals it targeted varied based on the region it called home. In North America, their prey included oversized versions of animals we recognize today, giant bison, camels, and if the opportunity arose, even mastodons and Columbian mammoths. Yes, these cats were taking down creatures that dwarfed modern elephants. In South America, Smilodon's targets were equally impressive and diverse, including creatures like Toxodon, Litopterna, various species of Glyptodon, along with more familiar animals such as horses and camelids. Some evidence even suggests that Smilodon occasionally went after caimans, cementing its status as a top predator. We know what Smilodon ate thanks to skeletal evidence such as tooth marks on bones, or Smilodon remains found alongside those of their prey, providing vital clues about its diet. One big question that's still hotly debated in paleontology circles is whether Smilodon was a lone hunter or a team player. This isn't just academic curiosity. Knowing whether Smilodon hunted in packs could tell us a lot about its social structure and what kind of prey it typically targeted. One of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting the idea that Smilodons lived socially comes from the La Brea tar pits in California. These California tar pits are a gold mine for paleontologists, preserving countless Ice Age animals that got stuck in the sticky asphalt. But most of the bones found in La Brea aren't from herbivores. The La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles are a strange window into the past. It's not just that they preserve the bones of mammoths and giant sloths. They also hold the remains of predators, drawn to the promise of an easy meal, only to become hopelessly trapped themselves. Smilodon fossils are the second most common find in these pits. Over 166,000 bones have been attributed to them. This has led some scientists to wonder if Smilodon might have been a social animal. In modern cat species, the more social ones tend to be more responsive to distress calls. So if one Smilodon got stuck, it might have called for help, attracting other members of its group, who then also got stuck. It's a grim thought, but it could explain why we find so many Smilodon remains in one place. Another fascinating clue pointing to Smilodon's possible social behavior is surprisingly touching, though in a prehistoric, slightly grim way. Some Smilodon fossils show signs of severe injuries or disabilities that would have made hunting nearly impossible. Yet, these individuals survived well into adulthood. This has led some paleontologists to propose what they call pseudo-healthcare among Smilodons. The idea is that these injured cats were cared for by their fellow Smilodons, much like how modern lions or wolves might support injured members of their pride or pack. One famous example is a Smilodon fossil that shows signs of hip dysplasia from a young age, yet managed to survive to adulthood. It's hard to imagine how such an animal could have hunted successfully on its own, leading to the heartwarming, if speculative, image of Smilodon families looking after their own. But not everyone's convinced by the Smilodon social club theory. Some researchers point out that Smilodon remains found outside of predator traps, like La Brea, tend to be more isolated. They argue that this suggests a more solitary lifestyle, more in line with many modern big cats. Regardless of whether Smilodon was a team player or a loner, one thing's for it was at the top of the food chain. But that doesn't mean it didn't have competition. The Ice Age was a time of giants, and Smilodon wasn't the only predator with an appetite for mammoth-sized meals. Two of Smilodon's biggest rivals were the American lion and the dire wolf. Now, if you're picturing the dire wolves from Game of Thrones, it's worth noting that while real dire wolves were impressive, they weren't quite as monstrous as their fictional counterparts. But they were formidable predators in their own right. Isotope analysis shows that they had a diet very similar to Smilodons. In other words, these predators were often competing for the same prey. So, how did Smilodon stack up against its competitors? Well, when it came to the American lion, it was probably a bit of a standoff. The American lion had size on its side, being one of the largest cats to ever exist. But Smilodon had those impressive canines, which likely served as a pretty effective deterrent. Most likely, these two apex predators tried to avoid each other when possible, but when conflicts did occur, it could have gone either way. The dire wolf, on the other hand, seems to have often come out second best in confrontations with Smilodon. Evidence from La Brea suggests that dire wolves would frequently abandon their kills when a Smilodon showed up. It's not hard to imagine why, given those sabers being on full display 24/7, most predators would probably decide that discretion was the better part of valor. But lions and wolves weren't the only competition Smilodon had to worry about. The Ice Age was also the time of the short-faced bear, a beast that could make even Smilodon look small by comparison. Some of these bears reached truly dinosaurian proportions, rivaling medium-sized sauropods in weight. However, these ursine giants were more omnivorous than Smilodon, which likely reduced direct competition. Plus, bears tend to be solitary creatures. So, if a group of Smilodons encountered one, the bear would likely have decided that this particular picnic basket wasn't worth the trouble. Now, we've talked a lot about Smilodon's impressive hunting adaptations, but there's one question we haven't addressed yet. How on earth did it eat with those ridiculous teeth? After all, those saber-like fangs seem like they would have been quite the obstacle during feeding. Well, Smilodon had a solution for that too. Unlike most predators that can chomp down from the front, Smilodon was equipped with specialized slicing teeth called carnassials. These teeth, situated on the sides of the mouth, worked like biological scissors, shearing through meat with ease. To eat, Smilodon would have turned its head to the side, using these carnassials to slice off manageable chunks of meat while its saber teeth stayed out of the way. If this eating style sounds familiar, that's because you might have seen it in action. Many modern cats and even other predators use a similar technique when tackling tough pieces of meat. It's a prime example of nature's problem solving. When life gives you saber teeth, you adapt your eating style accordingly. With its unique adaptations and hunting prowess, Smilodon carved out a vast empire for itself. Between its three species, it achieved a distribution across the Western Hemisphere that would make any modern predator green with envy. In North America, S. Gracilis and S. Fatalis roamed from coast to coast, reaching as far north as Alberta, Canada. Meanwhile, in South America, S. Fatalis and S. Populator established a domain stretching all the way down to Patagonia. But Smilodon wasn't just geographically widespread. It was also adaptable. Fossils have been found in a diverse array of environments, from grasslands and plains to woodlands and closed forests, from savannas to subtropical forests, and even mammoth steppes. This adaptability allowed Smilodon to live alongside a veritable who's who of Pleistocene megafauna. We're talking about a world where you might encounter short-faced bears, proboscideans, ground sloths the size of cars, armored glyptodonts, the rhino-like toxodon, camels, deer, horses, bison, and even terror birds. I sometimes imagine what it must have been like to walk through those ancient Ice Age landscapes. Not just the mammoths, impressive as they were, but something far more terrifying roamed there. Imagine a real-life version of those ice levels in video games, but with saber-toothed cats. And then imagine meeting humans. It's believed our ancestors first crossed paths with Smilodon around 25,000 years ago. Can you picture being one of those early humans, armed only with primitive tools, facing a saber-toothed cat? The relationship must have been tense. We were competing for the same food, and unfortunately for our ancestors, by the time we arrived, only the larger Populator and Fatalis remained. Bad timing indeed. Given that Meganterion, a possible Smilodon predecessor, occasionally preyed on Homo erectus, it's easy to imagine Smilodon considering early humans as potential prey too. But humans are resourceful. While direct evidence of human Smilodon confrontations is lacking, our superior technology and group tactics likely allowed us to turn the tables. In 2021, a petroglyph was discovered that seems to depict humans observing a Smilodon from afar. A tantalizing glimpse into a world where we shared the landscape with those magnificent, terrifying creatures. But this coexistence wasn't to last. Smilodon disappeared. The youngest remains of both Fatalis and Populator date back about 10,000 years ago, around the time humans began developing agriculture. The extinction of Smilodon continues to fuel debate. Some researchers believe humans played a role through competition or habitat alteration. Others are less convinced. The more widely accepted theory points to the broader Quaternary extinction event. This period of climate change led to the disappearance of many large animal species in North and South America. As the megafauna Smilodon relied on died out, the saber-toothed predator found itself in a precarious position. The very adaptations that made Smilodon a successful hunter of large prey became a liability. Specialized to take down giants, it struggled to adapt to a world where those giants disappeared. It was, in essence, too good at what it did, and when the world changed, it couldn't change with it. The extinction of Smilodon marked the end of an era. It was the last of the saber-toothed cats, not just in the Americas, but worldwide. With its passing, a lineage that had dominated the planet for over 20 million years ended. Its legacy resonates in museum exhibits, in our imaginations, and as a reminder of the fragile balance between species and their environments. As we face our own period of rapid change, the lesson of Smilodon is clear. Survival requires adaptation. Mammoths were icons of the Ice Age, towering 11 feet tall and weighing 6 tons. But they weren't the scariest things out there, not even close. Lurking in the same frozen wastelands was a creature that made mammoths look quaint. A beast so massive, so brutally engineered, it was less an animal and more a biological battering ram. Imagine the size of a mammoth, but fused with the destructive force of a medieval war machine. This was no gentle giant. It didn't need curved tusks or a coat to command respect. All it had, all it needed, was a single monstrous weapon, one so lethal, so precise, that every encounter became a high-stakes gamble with survival. This was the true juggernaut of the Ice Age, Elasmotherium sabericum. Imagine a rhinoceros that decided regular size wasn't intimidating enough. Now multiply that by roughly 3. Add the bulk of a small elephant and crown it with a single horn so massive it could serve as a battering ram for medieval warfare. What you're picturing is still probably smaller than the reality of an Elasmotherium. This wasn't just large, it was monumentally, almost absurdly oversized. Standing 6.5 feet at the shoulder and stretching 15 feet from nose to tail, Elasmotherium weighed in at a staggering 5 tons of pure horn-equipped muscle. But the mements alone don't capture the true horror of encountering this beast. The defining feature, the element that transformed Elasmotherium from merely large to genuinely nightmarish, was the horn. Not horns, plural like its modern rhinoceros descendants, but a single massive horn that could reach lengths of up to 6 feet. 6 feet of solid pointed bone jutting from the center of its forehead like some prehistoric unicorn's fever dream. And unlike the mammoth's curved tusks, which were primarily tools for foraging and occasional defense, Elasmotherium's horn was purpose-built for devastation. It was perfectly positioned for charging attacks, designed to concentrate the full force of 5 tons of angry herbivore into a single armor-piercing point. Any creature unfortunate enough to find itself on the receiving end of an Elasmotherium charge wasn't just facing injury, it was facing obliteration. But the horn was just the beginning. Strip away that intimidating weapon, and you're still left with a creature that redefined what it meant to be perfectly adapted for the Ice Age. I find myself fascinated by creatures that aren't just surviving, but truly thriving. And among the giants of the Ice Age, none fascinates me more than Elasmotherium. It wasn't some oversized elephant struggling to survive frozen conditions. This creature was purpose-built for the harsh realities of that world. The legs, that's where things get truly impressive. Unlike the mammoth's thick, pillar-like limbs suited for slow movement, Elasmotherium possessed legs that were both powerful and surprisingly agile. They weren't just weight-bearing supports. They were the foundation of a charging mechanism, able to accelerate 5 tons of muscle and bone into a thundering full-speed charge that could flatten anything in its path. Mammoths carried their weight in a relatively even distribution, but Elasmotherium? Its mass was front-loaded, designed to turn every charge into a catastrophic collision. It wasn't accidental. It was millions of years of brutal efficiency honed into one purpose: impact. The shoulder muscles alone were powerful enough to absorb the shock of high-speed collisions that would have shattered the bones of lesser creatures. Critically, Elasmotherium had solved the fundamental problem that plagued many Ice Age giants: energy efficiency. While mammoths required vast quantities of vegetation to fuel their massive bodies, Elasmotherium's digestive system was optimized for extracting maximum nutrition from the sparse grasses and tough vegetation that dominated the frozen steppes. This wasn't just survival, it was thriving in conditions that left other megafauna struggling. Its skull, built like a natural helmet, could withstand impacts that would have been fatal to creatures with more delicate cranial architecture. This wasn't just about protection, it was about turning the entire head into a weapon system. When Elasmotherium charged, it wasn't just the horn that posed a threat. It was the entire front end of the creature functioning as an organic siege engine. Compare this to the mammoth's approach to survival, which largely relied on group protection and intimidation through size. Elasmotherium needed no such social strategies. It was a solitary predator's nightmare and a territorial competitor's worst enemy, capable of defending resources and territory through sheer individual dominance. While mammoths huddled together for warmth and protection, Elasmotherium stood alone, because nothing else on the frozen landscape posed a credible threat. And then there's the horn, that magnificent, terrifying horn, at up to 6 feet in length and potentially weighing as much as 100 pounds. This wasn't some decorative display piece. This was a weapon that could punch through ice, tree trunks, and presumably any creature unfortunate enough to challenge its owner. To put this in perspective, that's a horn longer than a standard parking space is wide, attached to a creature that could wield it with the precision of a medieval knight and the force of a freight train. The positioning was crucial. Unlike modern rhinoceroses, which carry their horns on their snouts, Elasmotherium's horn was mounted directly on the forehead, the optimal position for delivering devastating charging attacks. This placement meant that when the creature lowered its head to charge, the horn became the leading edge of a 5-ton projectile moving at 25 miles per hour. The physics alone are genuinely frightening. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The horn wasn't just a weapon. Analysis of its structure suggests it served multiple functions that gave Elasmotherium distinct advantages over its contemporaries. The base was broad and sturdy enough to serve as a snowplow, allowing the creature to clear feeding areas that would have been inaccessible to other herbivores. In a world where food was scarce and competition was fierce, this ability to access buried vegetation was literally a matter of life and death. The horned surface was likely covered in keratin, the same material that makes up our fingernails, but structured for maximum durability. This covering would have been constantly growing and self-sharpening, ensuring that the weapon remained effective throughout the creature's lifetime. Unlike antlers that shed annually, this horn was a permanent, ever-improving tool of destruction. Recent fossil evidence suggests the horn may have been even more formidable than previously imagined. Some specimens show evidence of horn bases that could have supported structures up to 8 feet long, weapons that would have made the creature's intimidation factor approach the genuinely absurd. An 8-foot horn on a 5-ton creature represents a level of natural weaponry that has no modern equivalent. Imagine being a saber-toothed cat or cave bear, creatures that were accustomed to being the apex predators of their respective environments, suddenly encountering something that could quite literally impale you from 8 feet away. The horn didn't just change how Elasmotherium fought. It changed how everything else on the Ice Age landscape had to live, constantly aware that somewhere in the frozen wilderness there was a creature carrying a weapon that could end any confrontation before it truly began. This is why the mammoth's tusks, impressive as they were, pale in comparison. Tusks were tools, useful for digging, displaying, and occasional defense. But Elasmotherium's horn was something else entirely. It was domination made manifest, a weapon so effective that it redefined the very concept of herbivore. While mammoths were busy adapting to environments that barely tolerated their presence, Elasmotherium had claimed territories that actively welcomed their dominance. The key difference wasn't just what they could survive. It was what they could control. The Eurasian steppe during the Pleistocene was a landscape that seemed designed specifically for creatures like Elasmotherium. Vast open grasslands stretched for thousands of miles. Imagine a creature built like a living battering ram, roaming endless expanses of land where speed, power, and intimidation ruled. This was Elasmotherium, thriving in conditions where other megafauna couldn't establish permanent homes. The frozen steppes of Siberia, the wind-swept plains of Kazakhstan, the harsh grasslands of Central Asia, these were its hunting grounds. It's remarkable to think about. Elasmotherium claimed specific ranges, defending them so aggressively that migration became unnecessary. That massive horn wasn't just a weapon, it was a property deed, written in bone and enforced through violence. This gave them a huge advantage during the harshest periods of the Ice Age. While mammoth herds moved constantly to find food, burning precious calories, Elasmotherium simply cleared their territory of competitors and settled in. They could access buried vegetation that others couldn't reach, defend prime feeding areas that others couldn't claim, and maintain energy reserves that migrating species couldn't match. The fossil record tells a story of creatures not just surviving, but prospering. Remains have been found across a range stretching from Ukraine to Mongolia, suggesting successful territorial expansion, not desperate wandering. These weren't refugees from climate change. They were the landlords of the Ice Age, collecting rent in the form of exclusive access to the best grazing areas. Unlike mammoth populations, which fluctuated dramatically with environmental changes, Elasmotherium populations remained relatively stable throughout their existence. It wasn't luck, but the result of a survival strategy so effective it made them nearly immune to the environmental press that devastated other megafauna. For a creature so perfectly adapted to Ice Age conditions, so dominant in its chosen environment, and so well equipped for survival, its extinction presents one of paleontology's most perplexing mysteries. How do you eliminate something that appeared virtually indestructible? Mammoths survived in various forms until roughly 4,000 years ago, with some populations persisting on isolated islands well into human civilization. Elasmotherium vanished from the fossil record around 39,000 years ago. Not a gradual decline, but a sudden, complete disappearance that left no descendants and few clues about what could have overwhelmed such a formidable creature. The conventional explanation points to climate change, but that theory has serious problems. Elasmotherium had already survived multiple ice ages, numerous warming periods, and dramatic environmental shifts. They had proven themselves capable of adapting to changing conditions over millions of years. Why would this particular climate shift prove fatal when so many previous ones had been survived? Some suggest human hunting prey, but again, the evidence doesn't quite add up. While humans were certainly present in Elasmotherium's range, the idea that early humans could have systematically eliminated creatures this large and dangerous seems optimistic at best. We're talking about 5-ton animals armed with 6-foot horns and the temperament of a cornered badger. Even with primitive weapons, the cost-benefit analysis of hunting such creatures seems questionable. Perhaps their very dominance contributed to their downfall. Their territorial nature, while advantageous during stable periods, may have prevented them from adapting to rapidly changing conditions. Unlike mammoths, which could migrate to more favorable areas, Elasmotherium populations may have been too committed to their territories to abandon them when conditions deteriorated. But here's the truly unsettling part. The disappearance was so complete that for centuries, scientists weren't even Elasmotherium had existed at all. Unlike mammoth remains, which are found regularly and in excellent condition, Elasmotherium fossils are rare and often fragmentary. It's almost as if something deliberately erased them from the archaeological record. Recent discoveries have added new layers to this mystery. Some fossils show evidence of stress markers and nutritional deficiencies, suggesting the final populations were struggling with environmental press. Others display unusual growth patterns that might indicate disease or genetic problems. The picture emerging is of a species that didn't just disappear, but collapsed suddenly and catastrophically. Whatever eliminated Elasmotherium was powerful enough to bring down a creature that had reigned unchallenged for ages, resilient, dominant, and built to endure. And yet, it vanished, with barely a trace. For an animal that once defined the Ice Age landscape, the silence surrounding its extinction is genuinely haunting. The mammoth survival story, impressive as it is, suddenly seems less like triumph and more like luck. They weren't necessarily better adapted. Elasmotherium, it wasn't just another Ice Age animal. It was the pinnacle of prehistoric power, a creature so finely tuned to its environment that it redefined what dominance looked like. The mammoth may have gotten the fame, but Elasmotherium earned the title that mattered most, the real titan of the Ice Age. But Elasmotherium wasn't the only behemoth history forgot. While it ruled the frozen steppes, another titan far to the south was the definition of giant altogether, bigger than a mammoth, heavier than a T-Rex. and possibly the largest land mammal to ever walk the earth. When we envision the world that shaped our earliest ancestors, I often imagine a landscape dominated by predators. Saber-toothed cats stalking the savanna, massive hyenas lurking near waterholes, and early humans huddled around fires for protection. But what if one of the most significant competitors our ancestors faced wasn't a carnivore at all, but another primate? One so massive it would tower over any human alive today. Meet Dinopithecus ingens, the terrible ape of Pleistocene Africa. Standing over 1.5 meters, or around 5 feet tall when upright, and weighing up to 150 kilograms, or 330 pounds, it was nearly 5 times heavier than today's largest baboons. These colossal primates shared the African landscape with Australopithecus, an early Homo species, between roughly 3 to 2 million years ago. Yet despite their imposing presence during this pivotal chapter of prehistory, they remain virtually unknown outside of specialized scientific circles. Dinopithecus belongs to the family Cercopithecidae, the Old World monkeys, rather than the hominid family. Specifically, it's classified within the subfamily Papionini, alongside modern baboons, gelidas, and mangabeys. Despite this taxonomic distance from humans, Dinopithecus represents one of the most remarkable examples of primate gigantism in the fossil record. The genus first entered scientific literature in 1938 when paleontologist Robert Broom described Dinopithecus ingens based on fossil remains from Sterkfontein near Pretoria, South Africa. The name itself tells a story. Dino, from the Greek, for terrible or fearfully great, Pithecus, meaning ape or monkey, and ingens, meaning huge in Latin. A fitting title for a creature that pushed the boundaries of what we thought primates could become. Subsequent discoveries have primarily come from cave sites in South Africa, including Kromdraai and Cooper's Cave, locations famously associated with early hominin remains. Fossil evidence includes partial skulls, mandibles, and postcranial elements that allow paleontologists to reconstruct its appearance and lifestyle. Most fossils date between 3 and 2 million years ago, placing Dinopithecus firmly in the Pliocene epoch alongside early Australopithecus and Homo species. Physically, Dinopithecus was a scaled-up baboon built for terrestrial power. Its skull alone measured up to 30 centimeters in males and featured an elongated muzzle, enlarged canines, and a prominent sagittal crest for anchoring massive jaw muscles, indicators of both feeding strength and male-male competition. The mandible was exceptionally robust, with a deep body adapted to handle powerful chewing forces far beyond what is seen in modern baboons. Dental analysis shows a heavy emphasis on grinding plant material. Large molars with thick enamel point to a diet that included fibrous vegetation, seeds, and tubers, foods that required prolonged mastication. These adaptations suggest Dinopithecus could exploit tough resources that smaller primates couldn't process efficiently, offering a survival edge in diverse or fluctuating environments. Still, for all that chewing power, it needed a body that could carry the weight, literally. Though fossilized postcranial remains are fragmentary, they leave no doubt. This was a ground dweller built like a fortress. The bones are dense, the muscle attachments oversized, and the proportions suggest a primate that moved low and heavy. It wasn't agile, but it didn't need to be. It was stable, durable, a four-limbed tank that could traverse both woodland and savanna. Now, Here's where the social structure gets fascinating. Sexual dimorphism in Dinopithecus was extreme, even more pronounced than in modern baboons. Males may have weighed up to twice as much as females and bore significantly larger canines and cranial crests. This suggests intense male competition, likely involving physical confrontations and dominance displays, a social structure where size directly translated to reproductive success. Yet all this leaves Dinopithecus somewhere in the middle of its ecosystem. Its size positioned it as a mesopredator, both hunter and hunted. It likely fed on fruits, seeds, roots, and small animals, while remaining vulnerable to apex predators like saber-toothed cats or large hyenas. Its bulk, strength, and potential for aggressive defense would have made it a formidable opponent, one that early hominins may have respected, avoided, or even competed with. Modern baboons are notoriously territorial, confrontational, and quick to violence when threatened, and Dinopithecus almost certainly took that to the extreme. With large dominant males leading the charge, a threatened troop could have erupted into an explosion of noise, displays, and physical retaliation. Raised hackles, deafening vocalizations, and jaw-clapping would have been the first warning. But if that didn't work, those massive canines weren't just for show. A provoked Dinopithecus, especially a protective male, could have delivered devastating bites and powerful strikes capable of injuring or killing mid-sized predators. Some paleontologists estimate Dinopithecus could have delivered bite forces comparable to those of big cats, perhaps reaching or even exceeding 2,000 pounds of crushing force. I sometimes imagine what it must have been like to face down a Dinopithecus, not just one, but potentially a defensive circle of 10 to 20 of them, all muscle and rage. That would have deterred even large carnivores, and perhaps even our early hominin ancestors. This wasn't a creature that backed down easily. It simply didn't need to. During the time Dinopithecus thrived, South Africa was undergoing significant climatic shifts. For a primate of its size, these changes brought both challenges and opportunities. Forests gradually gave way to more open woodlands and grasslands, a transition that favored adaptable, ground-dwelling species. Fossil sites suggest that Dinopithecus inhabited a mosaic landscape of open savanna interspersed with woodlands and riverine forests, environments not unlike those preferred by modern baboons. Life for Dinopithecus likely mirrored that of modern baboons, but on a far more intimidating scale. These multi-male, multi-female groups were probably structured around rigid dominance hierarchies, with adult males asserting their rank through visual displays and, when necessary, brutal physical confrontations. Some males weighed up to 150 kilograms. These clashes were anything but subtle. Adult males likely positioned themselves on the outskirts of the troop, forming a living barrier against potential predators. At dawn, the group would descend from cliffs or tall trees, safe havens used to avoid nocturnal hunters. From there, the day began with movement and a lot of eating. Feeding likely consumed much of the daylight hours. Adult males may have needed up to 7 kilograms of plant matter daily. Grasses, seeds, fruits, bulbs, and tubers, all requiring tremendous chewing power. And while plants formed the base of their diet, they weren't strictly herbivores. Like their modern relatives, Dinopithecus likely supplemented their diet with animal protein, small vertebrates, insects, and scavenged carcasses. But here's where things get interesting. With their size and strength, they may have taken things further. Juvenile antelope, or the young of larger prey animals, weren't out of the question. And when it came to disputed carcasses, their bulk alone may have been enough to intimidate other predators into backing off. Much like modern papianins, Dinopithecus likely relied on a rich set of vocalizations, facial cues, body postures, and physical contact. With brains scaled to their size and complex social structures to manage, their interactions were probably nuanced, broadcasting everything from individual rank to predator warnings with a glance or a grunt. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Dinopithecus is its temporal and geographic overlap with early human species. Between approximately 3 and 2 million years ago, as Dinopithecus roamed the South African landscape, the hominin presence was undergoing a period of remarkable change. Species like Australopithecus were being joined by early Homo. Upright walking had become well established, brain sizes were growing, and the first stone tools were appearing. This was the crucible of humanity, and Dinopithecus was there to witness it. The fossil evidence places Dinopithecus in association with hominin remains at several critical sites. At Swartkrans and Cooper's Cave in South Africa's Cradle of Humankind, Dinopithecus fossils have been found in the same deposits as Australopithecus robustus and early Homo specimens. This wasn't just proximity across a landscape. These primates inhabited the same immediate environments, drank from the same water sources, sheltered in the same cave systems, and likely observed each other regularly. The size disparity alone would have created a power imbalance. Early hominins stood approximately 1.2 to 1.5 meters tall and weighed between 30 to 55 kilograms. They would have been significantly outmatched by adult male Dinopithecus, which averaged around 80 kilograms, with larger individuals reaching up to 150 kilograms. Armed with formidable canines and superior upper body strength, even the smaller female Dinopithecus would have presented a physical threat. Competition for resources was inevitable. Both groups were omnivorous, with overlapping dietary preferences, though with different specializations. Early hominins were developing adaptations for a more versatile diet, including meat obtained through scavenging and possibly hunting, while Dinopithecus likely specialized in efficiently processing large quantities of plant materials. Nevertheless, both would have sought out the same high-value food resources, fruits, nuts, tubers, and water sources, creating potential conflict points. It wasn't just diet that brought them into contact. Both groups favored mosaic environments, offering a mix of woodlands for shelter and open areas for foraging. Both likely needed trees or cliff faces for nighttime safety from predators. Both would have been drawn to reliable water sources, particularly during dry seasons. This shared preference for similar habitats would have end regular encounters between the species. The responses of early hominins to Dinopithecus were likely complex and situational. Direct competition was probably avoided when possible, with hominins developing greater behavioral flexibility to compensate for their physical disadvantage. This might have included adjusting activity patterns to avoid peak Dinopithecus feeding times, developing more efficient foraging strategies, or utilizing tools to access food resources unavailable to even the powerful Dinopithecus. One intriguing possibility is that the presence of Dinopithecus may have accelerated hominin tool use and cooperation. When confronted with larger, more physically imposing competitors, our ancestors, the extinction of Dinopithecus, that mega monkey, has always struck me. I imagine the press they faced, the shrinking woodlands, the rise of more adaptable baboons, and then us, Homo erectus, arriving on the scene with our tools and ever-expanding diets. It wasn't a sudden collapse, but a slow, mounting prez. I've often wondered about the predator dynamics of that time. A troop of Dinopithecus might have inadvertently protected smaller hominins, their size and aggression deterring predators. But a small group of hominins could also have attracted unwanted attention, endangering the Dinopithecus nearby. Around 1.8 to 1.6 million years ago, they vanished. Climate change, shrinking woodlands, and expanding grasslands likely played a significant role, disrupting their food and shelter. Competition for more adaptable baboons added to the strain, and our own species, Homo erectus, with our advanced tools and broader diets, intensified the resource competition. Even disease may have played a part. Sometimes the very traits that make a species successful, large size, slow reproduction, and dietary specialization, can become vulnerabilities. The dire wolf, known in ancient Greece as Enoxion Daris, the terrible wolf, inspires the same sort of awe. They say it was so dominant and ferocious that even the largest prehistoric animals feared it. With jaws that could tear through flesh and bones as massive as a mammoth's, it struck fear into the hearts of all who crossed its path. These apex predators were renowned for their meat-centric diet and intimidating hunting skills. Their unique dental features, like distinct posterior cuspids and transverse crests, set them apart, and their digestive systems were tailored for processing meat, with short intestines optimized for their carnivorous diet. Their robust skeletons, powerful limbs, and broad chests hinted at their strength and hunting prowess. Their bite force, among the strongest of any canid, enabled them to take down formidable prey with remarkable efficiency. They prowled diverse landscapes, from the plains of North America to the arid savannas of South America and the steppes of Eastern Asia. In North America, they hunted Bison antiquus, Pleistocene horses like Equus scotti, and large ground sloths such as Megalonyx. In South America, they feasted on large ground sloths, glyptodonts, toxodons, mastodons, and extinct camelids like Hemiarchenia. In Eastern Asia, they faced formidable opponents like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, steppe bison, and wild horses. Amidst fierce competition with other predators like Xenocyon, Smilodon, the American lion, and the giant short-faced bear, dire wolves fought fiercely for dominance. At the La Brea tar pits, they clashed with predators and scavengers amidst trapped herbivores, showcasing their dominance by outnumbering gray wolves 5-1 and demonstrating resilience in challenging environments. Living in monogamous pairs and hunting in packs, dire wolves displayed fierce determination and adaptability. Their hunting strategies, tooth breakage rates, and pack dynamics reveal insights into their evolutionary prowess and survival instincts. With their impressive ability to hunt a wide range of prey, adaptability, ferocity, and versatility in diverse environments, the dire wolf truly stood as the ultimate ruler of the food chain. The origin of the dire wolf has long sparked debate among scientists. One theory suggests they arose from an expansion of the genus Canis from Eurasia. Another proposes they emerged from an ancestral lineage native to the Americas, distinct from the genus Canis. In 1992, scientists tried to extract mitochondrial DNA from dire wolf remains, but tar residue from the La Brea tar pits thwarted their efforts. It wasn't until 2021 that scientists finally accessed nuclear DNA from 5 dire wolf fossils. The groundbreaking discoveries revealed that dire wolves represent a unique genetic lineage that split from wolf-like canines a staggering 5.7 million years ago. This supports the theory of an ancestral lineage native to the Americas, distinct from the genus Canis. Despite similarities in skeletal structures, dire wolves and gray wolves are not closely related, a testament to convergent evolution, where different species independently develop similar traits. The dire wolf stands out as a truly unique species within the canine world. The story of the dire wolf spans an impressive 40 million years. It began with the arrival of the canid family in North America. From fox-like vulpini to dog-like canini, the diverse branches of their family tree showcase such intriguing variations. I've been particularly fascinated by the recent discoveries of Asian dire wolf fossils, as they challenge previous theories about the limits of their range. It makes me rethink everything I thought I understood. Dire wolf fossils have been discovered in diverse habitats across North and South America. We find them in plains, grasslands, forested mountain areas, and even arid savannas. The most fossil-abundant areas are the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles and the Tula Springs in Nevada. While dire wolf remains are less common at high latitudes in North America, those Asian fossils are changing the picture. Fossils have been reported in various states in the United States, with major sites located east of the Rocky Mountains. Dire wolf fossils have also been uncovered in various locations across Mexico, particularly in the San Josetito Cave and El Cedazo, and specimens dated to less than 17,000 years ago have been found in South America, in countries including Venezuela, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Ecuador. The discovery of a dire wolf fossil in northeastern China in 2020 suggests a migration route from mid-latitude North America across Beringia into Eurasia. This challenges previous assumptions about what limited their dispersal. Understanding their physical characteristics really sheds light on their remarkable adaptations and behaviors. The dire wolf was similar in proportion to modern North American wolves, like the Yukon wolf and northwestern wolf, but they exhibited variations in size and morphology. While some dire wolf specimens from Rancho La Brea were smaller than the largest northern wolves today, others were larger. The dire wolf had smaller feet and a larger head compared to modern wolves of similar body size, with a massive skull characterized by broader dimensions and a higher sagittal crest. Geographic differences in dire wolves were observed, with specimens from California and Mexico showing distinct craniodental features and limb proportions compared to those from east of the Continental Divide. Canis dirus guaratlii had shorter and lighter limbs, making it less adapted for running than timber wolves and coyotes, while Canis, Dirus, and Axius possessed longer limbs comparable to the Yukon wolf. 125,000 years ago, dire wolves roamed the earth when the sea level was 8 meters higher than today in the Sangamonian interglacial period. The Wisconsin glacial period followed, lasting from 80,000 to 20,000 years ago, also known as the Ice Age, with glaciers covering much of North America. Dire wolves went extinct 9,500 years ago, marking the end of a unique era. Research indicates that dire wolves evolved separately from modern North American gray wolves and coyotes, without genetic mixing. The reasons for their extinction remain debated, likely involving factors such as climate change, competition with other predators, and changes in prey availability. The disappearance of dire wolves marked the end of a unique lineage within the Canidae family and potentially altered predator-prey dynamics at the time. Between 125,000 years ago and 9,500 years ago, significant climatic shifts occurred, shaping the environment in which dire wolves lived. These changes, alongside fluctuations in prey populations, likely influenced the dire wolves' survival. Dire wolves existed in diverse habitats ranging from grasslands to forests, adapting to various environmental conditions. As apex predators, they played a crucial role in regulating ecosystems, impacting the populations of herbivores and smaller predators. Their extinction represented a loss of biodiversity and disrupted ecological balances established over millennia. While interbreeding is known among wolf-like canines, studies have found no evidence of genetic mixing between dire wolves and extant North American gray wolves or coyotes, suggesting independent evolution. The exact reasons for dire wolf extinction remain a subject of debate, with factors such as climate change, competition with other predators, and changes in prey availability likely playing a role. Reflecting on the era of the dire wolf, its formidable presence and powerful bite force captivate our imagination. In the grand tapestry of Earth's history, few chapters are as captivating as the rise and fall of the dinosaurs. These magnificent creatures dominated our planet for over 160 million years, shaping ecosystems and adapting into a myriad of forms that continue to captivate our imagination. But as the curtain fell on the age of reptiles, it gave way to an unexpected sequel, one where the supporting characters stepped into the spotlight and nearly stole the show. Enter the forest wrasses, more commonly known as the terror birds. These feathered nightmares emerged from the ashes of the dinosaur extinction, carrying the torch of their terrifying predecessors and proving that nature abhors a vacuum, especially when it comes to apex predators. Roughly 53 million years ago in the early Eocene, the world was a very different place. A hothouse Earth with lush forests stretching from pole to pole, filled with a diverse range of life forms that emerged after the extinction of the dinosaurs. It was in this steamy prehistoric paradise that the first terror bird, Paleopsilopterus, made its debut. Standing at a modest height of 1 meter or 3 feet, this Brazilian bird might not have seemed particularly terrifying at first glance. In fact, it was about the same size as a modern-day stork. Hardly the stuff of nightmares, but appearances can be deceiving, and Paleopsilopterus had something its contemporaries lacked: potential. What set Paleopsilopterus apart was its agility and speed, traits that would become hallmarks of its descendants. While it may not have been the apex predator of its time, dwarfed by monstrous crocodilians and giant snakes, it was a harbinger of things to come. Little did the other inhabitants of ancient South America know. I sometimes wonder what the early mammals of Europe must have thought. Imagine their surprise when a terror bird appeared, bringing a taste of South American terror to the Old World. Eleuthernis, as we call it, was a globe-trotting terror, whose fossil remains have been found in both France and Switzerland. It's the only known member of its family to have lived outside the Americas. Nature, it seemed, had plans for this lineage of avian predators. And those plans involved getting bigger, much bigger. Just 3 million years after Paleopsilus took its first steps, Eleuthernis emerged, a terror bird that stood 50% taller than its ancestor, becoming a formidable predator. But Eleuthernis wasn't content with merely growing in size. It also expanded its range in a way that no other terror bird would match. While most of its kin would remain firmly rooted in the Americas, Eleuthernis spread its wings and ventured across the sea to Europe. But Eleuthernis was just the opening act. As the epochs rolled by, the terror birds continued to grow, adapt, and diversify. It was as if they were engaged in a relentless competition with themselves, each new species trying to outdo its predecessors in size and ferocity. The Oligocene epoch, spanning from about 34 to 23 million years ago, marked a turning point in the terror bird saga. It was during this time that the family truly began to live up to its name, with the emergence of giants that would have given pause to even the bravest of prey, the Paraphazornis. This Brazilian bird was an absolute behemoth that stood 1.4 meters, or 4.5 feet tall, and tipped the scales at a whopping 180 kilograms, or 400 pounds. To put that into perspective, Paraphazornis outweighed the largest living bird today, the ostrich. This was no lightweight contender. Paraphazornis was built like a feathered tank with robust bones that spoke of raw power. Paleontologists believe that Paraphazornis hunted using a combination of kicks, slashes, and powerful jabs with its sharp beak. It's a hunting style that might remind one of a prehistoric version of mixed martial arts. Paraphazornis wasn't just a mindless brute. Like many of its terror bird kin, it likely possessed a level of intelligence that set it apart from other contemporary predators. Studies of terror bird brain cases suggest that they had well-developed visual and auditory centers, indicating keen senses that would have made them formidable hunters. As impressive as Paraphazornis was, it was merely setting the stage for what was to come. As we step into the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, spanning from about 23 to 2.5 million years ago, we encounter the true giants of the terror bird family. These were creatures that pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be a bird, reaching sizes that rivaled the predatory dinosaurs of old. 3 names stand out in this pantheon of avian terrors: Titanus, Kelenkin, and Brontornis. Each of these genera represents the pinnacle of the terror bird lineage, and each had its own claim to fame. Titanus, the youngest and smallest of the trio, was also the most adventurous. While most terror birds were content to dominate South America, Titanus had grander ambitions. It crossed the newly formed land bridge connecting North and South America during the Great American Interchange, becoming the only large South American predator to successfully establish itself in North America. Unlike most of its relatives, this bird lived in what is now the United States, including the states of Texas, Florida, and California. Standing 2 meters or 6.6 feet tall, Titanus would have been an imposing sight for the mammals of North America. Imagine the shock of a Pleistocene horse or ground sloth, accustomed to watching out for saber-toothed cats and dire wolves, suddenly confronted by this alien predator, half bird, half nightmare. But as impressive as Titanus was, it was dwarfed by its cousins back in South America. Kelencan, named after a mythological Tehuelche spirit, stood a towering 3 meters or 9.8 feet tall and weighed around 250 kilograms or 550 pounds. This was a bird the size of a grizzly bear with a head larger than that of a horse and a beak that could crush bone. Speaking of its head, recent studies have shown that Kelencan and other large terror birds possessed a unique skull structure that set them apart from their smaller relatives. Known as the terror bird skull type, this adaptation gave them increased bite force and pecking power. This suggests that these giants may have been capable of taking down larger prey than previously thought, potentially including some of the megafauna that roamed South America during their reign. But the title of the largest terror bird is still hotly debated, with Brontornis giving Kelencan a run for its money. While slightly shorter at 2.8 meters or 9.2 feet, Brontornis was built like a feathered bulldozer, potentially weighing up to 400 kilograms or 890 pounds. This made it not just the heaviest terror bird, but also the heaviest carnivorous bird of all time and the 4th heaviest bird overall. Interestingly, Brontornis has been the subject of scientific controversy. Some paleontologists have questioned whether it was truly a terror bird or even a carnivore at all, citing similarities in its toe claws to those of herbivorous birds. However, recent studies have identified features in Brontornis's vertebrae that are unique to terror birds, lending weight to its classification as a member of this fearsome family. Whether Brontornis was a terror bird or not, its massive size would have made it a force to be reckoned with. Its weight likely made it slower than its more nimble cousins, but what it lacked in speed, it made up for in raw power. One can imagine Brontornis as the tank of the terror bird lineage. I find it fascinating that terror birds, despite their imposing size, also relied on speed. Studies of their leg bones reveal a structure remarkably similar to modern-day ostriches. Short thigh bones paired with elongated lower leg and foot bones. Paleontologists estimate that many terror birds, including some of the larger species like Titanus, could have reached speeds exceeding 30 miles per hour. That's faster than Usain Bolt, while being twice as tall and weighing several times as much. But speed wasn't just about chasing prey. For many terror birds, especially the smaller and medium-sized species, it was also a crucial defensive adaptation. In a world filled with other large predators, the ability to make a quick getaway could mean the difference between life and death. This combination of speed and size made terror birds versatile predators, capable of adapting to a variety of hunting strategies. Smaller, faster species might have specialized in chasing down swift prey like small mammals and reptiles, while the larger, more powerful species could have employed ambush tactics or even taken on larger, more dangerous quarry. While their imposing size and fearsome beaks often steal the spotlight, The true power of terror birds lay in their highly developed senses. Recent studies of terror bird skulls and brain cases have revealed that these prehistoric predators were equipped with sensory capabilities that put them leagues ahead of many of their contemporaries. While terror birds might not have had eyesight quite as sharp as modern raptors, they were far from being visually impaired. Their eyes were well developed and positioned to provide excellent depth perception. But what really set terror bird vision apart was its versatility. These birds were equally adept at seeing in bright daylight and in the dim light of dawn and dusk, making them effective hunters around the clock. As for their hearing, the inner ear structure of terror birds suggests an acute sensitivity to low-frequency sounds. This ability would have allowed them to detect the footsteps and movements of potential prey, even when hidden by dense vegetation. I imagine a terror bird standing motionless in the prehistoric forests of South America, its head cocked slightly to one side. To a casual observer, it might appear to be resting or even dozing, but in reality, every fiber of its being is alert, its incredibly sensitive ears picking up the faintest rustle of leaves or the softest patter of tiny feet. In an instant, it can pinpoint the location of its unsuspecting prey and launch into action. This combination of visual and auditory prowess made terror birds the complete predatory package. It's no wonder these birds were able to dominate their ecosystems for millions of years. But even the mightiest rulers faced their downfall, and the reign of the terror birds was no exception. For millions of years, these avian predators had ruled supreme in South America, developing into a diverse array of species that filled various ecological niches. But somewhere along the line, their luck ran out. Traditionally, the extinction of the terror birds was linked to the Great American Interchange, a major paleozoographic event that occurred about 2.7 million years ago. This event saw the formation of the Isthmus of Panama, creating a land bridge between North and South America. As a result, animals from both continents were able to migrate across this newly formed connection, leading to a significant reshuffling of fauna. The conventional wisdom held that the influx of new predators from North America, including cats, dogs, and bears, outcompeted the terror birds, leading to their eventual extinction. It was a neat and tidy explanation that seemed to make perfect sense. However, as is often the case in science, the truth has turned out to be more complex and nuanced. Recent studies have cast doubt on this simple competition-based extinction model, revealing a more intricate tapestry of factors that led to the terror bird's downfall. One of the primary challenges to the competition hypothesis comes from a closer examination of the fossil record. It turns out that most terror birds, along with many of their main South American competitors, had already disappeared long before placental predators arrived in South America in significant numbers. This timing mismatch suggests that something else was at play. Moreover, the success of Titanus in North America serves as a counterpoint to the idea that terror birds couldn't compete with placental mammals. Not only did Titanus successfully expand its range northward during the interchange, but it also managed to coexist with large canids and felines for millions of years. Clearly, at least some terror birds were more than capable of holding their own against mammalian predators. So, if competition alone didn't doom the terror birds, what did? The answer, as is often the case in paleontology, likely involves a complex interplay of factors. Climate change, in particular, may have played a significant role. From the Oligocene to the Pliocene, Earth's climate was on a long-term cooling trend, culminating in a series of ice ages. This global cooling would have had a profound impact on the ecosystems that terror birds called home. As temperatures dropped and habitats changed, the lush forests that many terror bird species relied on would have given way to more open landscapes. For years, I believed terror birds had vanished around 1 million years ago. But then, new fossil evidence dramatically altered my understanding. It turns out some smaller species persisted until a mere 6,000 years ago, a blink in geological time. Even more astonishing is the discovery of fossils from a possible terror bird species dating back only 18,000 years. Imagine, they might have survived almost until humans arrived in South America. This revised timeline truly fascinates me. How close did our ancestors come to encountering these feathered giants? What stories might have been whispered around ancient fires? Could there be a kernel of truth in the legends of giant birds that still echo in South American folklore? It's unlikely humans and terror birds ever met face to face. Yet, the idea that stories of these creatures were passed down through generations isn't entirely implausible. After all, other megafauna, like woolly mammoths and giant ground sloths, left indelible marks on human culture and mythology. This near miss between humans and terror birds is a poignant reminder of the incredible diversity of life that has graced our planet. I find it sobering to think that if the terror birds had managed to hold on for just a few thousand years longer, our understanding of the natural world might be profoundly different today. But let's shift our focus now from feathered giants to another apex predator of the past. I'm thinking of Tyrannosaurus rex, a name that still evokes a sense of primeval terror. In the thick forests of the past, T-Rex was the undisputed ruler, striking fear into the heart of any creature that crossed its path. With its earth-shaking movements and razor-sharp teeth, this dinosaur has long been considered the epitome of prehistoric might. Even today, its reputation endures as perhaps the most frightening being to ever walk the earth. But just how terrifying was T-Rex, really? My journey into understanding this creature began in 1902, when Barnum Brown, a paleontologist, unearthed the first known fragment of a T-Rex skeleton in Montana. That discovery ignited a new era in dinosaur research, sparking widespread fascination. Since then, major finds, like the virtually complete specimen named Sue, discovered in South Dakota, have provided invaluable insights into the morphology, behavior, and scientific significance of Tyrannosaurus rex. Through meticulous excavation, evaluation, and reconstruction, researchers have pieced together the story of this giant predator and its role as a dominant apex predator during the late Cretaceous period. T-Rex, along with other large theropod dinosaurs like Tarbosaurus and Daspeltosaurus, belongs to the subfamily Tyrannosaurini within the family Tyrannosauridae. As one of the last and most widely recognized tyrannosaurid species, Tyrannosaurus rex stands as a key figure in the evolution of dinosaurs, reigning as the top predator of the late Cretaceous era. Stretching to an almost unbelievable length, T-Rex boasted a muscular body that could reach up to 12 meters, a distance comparable to the length of a typical school bus, from the tip of its formidable snout to the end of its powerful tail. And if certain paleontological speculations are accurate, some specimens may have even exceeded that monumental length, perhaps reaching 13 meters, dwarfing any other terrestrial predator of its time. But T-Rex's magnificence extended far beyond its sheer size. This imposing giant could reach a height of 6 meters at the hips. Just imagine that for a moment. An enormously tall creature standing on two powerful legs, bearing the weight of its massive frame, its head held high, surveying its domain with an undeniable regal authority. Having considered their immense size, the next question that naturally arises is, how heavy were these remarkable creatures? Estimates suggest that a T-Rex could have weighed anywhere from 12 to 18 tons, with its skin and flesh covering its massive bones. To put that into perspective, that's roughly equivalent to the weight of several small cars compressed into the form of a single awe-inspiring predator, a true testament to the sheer power and bulk of this ancient apex predator. The Tyrannosaurus rex possessed a sturdy skeletal structure featuring a distinct vertebral column comprised of neck, back, and sacral vertebrae. While the precise number of tail vertebrae varied, its neck formed a muscular S-shaped curve supporting its massive head. Pneumatic depressions and robust neural spines provided strength and flexibility. The forelimbs were short, with two clawed fingers, contrasting sharply with the long hind limbs, contributing to its imposing stature. The pelvis featured a lengthy ilium and a large pubic boot, while the hind foot had an arctometatarsalia metatarsus. Throughout its skeleton, many bones were hollowed, reducing weight without compromising strength, which was essential for supporting its immense bulk. The skulls of Tyrannosaurus rex, renowned for their massive size and impressive strength, could reach lengths of up to 1.54 meters. That's about the size of an adult human. The skulls of Tyrannosaurus rex were truly something to behold. They featured large fenestrae, which reduced weight and showcased unique adaptations, like an extremely wide rear and a narrow snout. These features and exceptional binocular vision, composed of massive yet fused bones with pneumatized components, these skulls contributed to the tyrannosaurid trend of a powerful bite, far surpassing that of non-tyrannosaurids. I find it fascinating how the upper jaw's U-shaped tip allowed for the extraction of more tissue and bone with each bite, even though it heightened stress on the front teeth. The teeth in the upper jaw of Tyrannosaurus rex exhibited prominent ridges and tips that curled backward like cutting tools, showing its distinct heterodonty. The remaining teeth, robust and spaced, resembled, well, lethal bananas. In mature individuals, the upper jaw housed larger teeth than the lower jaw, with the largest tooth discovered measuring a staggering 30.5 centimeters in length. I'm always struck by the sheer scale of these creatures. Numerous small openings were observed in both the upper and lower jaws, suggesting potential sensory functions or indications of external structures. Despite Tyrannosaurus rex's reputation for its massive jaws and teeth, I can't help but think about its disproportionately small arms. Some speculate that these small arms were not useless remains, but deadly weapons, used in hand-to-hand combat. Paleontologist Stephen Stanley suggests they were lethal weapons. With a length of just 3 ft, they had crescent-shaped claws sharpened to a razor edge, capable of causing deadly injuries to unsuspecting prey. I try to picture it. The T-Rex advances towards its target with its huge head hanging above, while its strong front limbs make rapid slashing movements, cutting through tissue and muscles with frightening accuracy. This provides a better understanding of how the T-Rex hunted, showing its skill in quickly and effectively immobilizing its prey. Once thought to be useless structures, like wisdom teeth in humans or wings in flightless birds, the T-Rex's arms are now recognized as crucial weapons in its hunting tactics, adding to the fear of this prehistoric dominant predator. The portrayal of Tyrannosaurus rex in Jurassic Park movies emphasizes its poor eyesight, as characters often evade its notice by remaining still. However, recent scientific findings suggest otherwise. Paleontologists, drawing upon comparative anatomy and fossil evidence, theorize that the T-Rex likely had vision like contemporary predators, like hawks, with the ability to detect both moving and stationary objects. This challenges its cinematic depiction and deepens our understanding of its sensory capabilities. Another perspective suggests the T-Rex was an adept ambush predator, utilizing its size, powerful jaws, and heightened senses to swiftly hunt prey. Conversely, some view it as a scavenger feeding on carrion or scavenging from carcasses. These differing views underscore the complexity of the T-Rex's behavior and ecological role, fueling ongoing debates among researchers. Along with its extraordinary eyesight, the Tyrannosaurus rex possessed a remarkable sense of smell, akin to vultures today. This keen olfactory ability allowed it to spot objects up to 6 km away under ideal conditions. In addition to its sharp senses, the T-Rex excelled at hunting due to its quick speed. Able to detect prey from a distance, it could pursue its targets at speeds reaching 25 mph, a pace comparable to the world record sprinting speed of Usain Bolt. Imagine yourself wandering in a primeval environment, trying to navigate back to safety with the noises of the woods echoing in the background. Suddenly, a tremendous noise halts you in your tracks. The Tyrannosaurus rex is approaching, causing your heart to race. Desperately trying to escape the advancing creature, you sprint frantically, your feet pounding on the forest floor. Yet, you feel the earth tremble under your feet as the T-Rex closes in. Glancing back, you see its massive silhouette with gleaming sharp teeth under the sun's rays. Realizing to no escape, the T-Rex's jaws close on you with incredible force. 50 to 60 teeth, each as big as a banana, pierce your skin simultaneously, sending waves of agony through your body. In that horrifying moment, you experience the true terror of being hunted by the most formidable predator to ever roam the earth. The feeding and diet of the Tyrannosaurus rex were integral to its dominance as a top predator during the late Cretaceous period. With its massive size and powerful jaws filled with serrated teeth, T-Rex was a formidable carnivore. Its diet primarily consisted of large herbivorous dinosaurs such as Triceratops and Ankylosaurus, which were among the toughest dinosaurs of their time and were preyed upon by T-Rex. Additionally, at times, T-Rex would also prey upon other large carnivorous dinosaurs, showcasing its fearsome predatory prowess. For example, it's believed that T-Rex may have occasionally targeted individuals of its own kind or even formidable predators, demonstrating the sheer dominance and terror of this apex predator. The Tyrannosaurus rex had a significant impact on its surroundings beyond its role as an efficient hunter. Its presence necessitated changes in the behavior of other animals. Some dinosaurs developed defenses such as speed or armor to evade its attacks, while others sought refuge in dense forests or migrated to new areas. As the dominant predator, T-Rex reshaped prey distribution and population dynamics, influencing ecological balance and predator-prey relationships. The Tyrannosaurus rex shared its environment with a diverse array of other dinosaurs, each possessing unique adaptations and behaviors. Among these were Edmontosaurus, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Torosaurus, Albertosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, Denversaurus, Ornithomimus, and Anzu. The T-Rex's formidable presence. Forget the horned helmets and storm-tossed seas you might imagine when you picture the Viking Age. I've come to learn that the Vikings faced something far more terrifying than a storm. Creatures so colossal and powerful, they seemed ripped from legend. These weren't just animals. They were giants of a dying world, beasts that could crush ships and skewer warriors in an instant. Armed with iron blades and wooden shields, the Vikings didn't just conquer lands. They battled nature itself in clashes so intense they became legends whispered for centuries. The first beast our Norse ancestors regularly encountered was the magnificent aurochs, wild cattle unlike anything alive today. Standing at a towering 1.8 meters or 6 feet at the shoulder, these weren't your typical farm animals. A full-grown aurochs bull could weigh up to 1,000 kilograms or 2,200 pounds, with a muscular frame that dwarfed even the largest modern cattle breeds. What made aurochs truly intimidating were their enormous horns, curved weapons that could span up to 1 meter or 3.3 feet from tip to tip. These weren't defensive tools, they were perfectly designed killing instruments. The forward-facing orientation allowed bulls to charge directly at threats with enough force to impale a fully armored warrior or even flip a small boat. Archaeological evidence suggests that aurochs' horns were often kept as trophies after successful hunts, becoming drinking vessels for the most prestigious Viking warriors. The relationship between Vikings and aurochs was more than just survival. It was woven into their very culture, leaving a mark on Norse art, symbolism, and even the warrior mindset. Hunting these beasts was a true test of courage for young Norse warriors. Unlike modern hunting, where distance and firearms provide safety, Viking hunters had to approach within spear-throwing range, close enough to smell the animal's breath. A charging aurochs could reach speeds of 35 kilometers per hour or 22 miles per hour, leaving hunters with mere seconds to make their throw or face the consequences. Many Norse graves contain evidence of horn wounds, silent testimony to hunts gone wrong. By the Viking Age, aurochs populations were already declining across Europe due to habitat loss and hunting press. The last known aurochs died in 1627 in Poland's Jaktorów forest, long after the Viking era had ended. But the land wasn't the only domain where Vikings encountered magnificent creatures that have since vanished. The seas that formed their highways held their own vanished giants. If you sailed with Vikings across the North Atlantic, you would have witnessed an extraordinary sight along rocky coastlines. Colonies of thousands of black and white birds standing upright, like tiny sentinels. The great auk, often called the original penguin, bore a striking resemblance to its southern hemisphere counterparts, despite having no direct relation. Standing about 75 to 85 centimeters tall, these flightless birds were perfectly adapted to the cold waters of the North Atlantic. Their wings had transformed into powerful flippers that propelled them through the ocean with remarkable speed. Measurements based on similar birds suggest they could fly underwater at up to 35 kilometers per hour, or 22 miles per hour. On land, however, they were awkwardly vulnerable, waddling upright on two legs, unable to take flight when danger approached. For Vikings, the great auk represented an almost absurdly convenient resource. Unlike most prey that required chasing, these birds couldn't flee effectively on land, nor seafarers could simply walk among nesting colonies and select their victims. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands reveals vast quantities of great auk bones in kitchen middens, often showing cut marks consistent with meat removal. The great auk's waterproof feathers were prized for insulation and bedding. Its fat provided lamp oil, and its beaks became decorative items. A Viking burial in Norway even featured a necklace with 5 great auk beaks, hinting at both symbolic and practical value. Ironically, the bird's marine adaptations made it vulnerable, breeding only on a few remote islands, laying a single egg on rocky ground. By the Viking Age, human hunting had already forced some colonies to vanish. The great auk's final extinction didn't occur until 1844, when the last confirmed pair was killed on the island of Elde off Iceland. A sad epilogue to a relationship that began when the first Norse ships reached their breeding grounds. The birds that had once numbered in the millions, forming colonies so vast they darkened shorelines, vanished because they had no natural defense against human predation. While Vikings ventured across vast oceans, the forests that surrounded their settlements held creatures just as remarkable and far more dangerous. Among these was a distinct forest giant that many researchers now believe represented a specialized hybrid population, the European forest elk, or skogshelg, a creature that combined characteristics of what we now classify as separate moose and elk species. Standing up to 2.1 meters, or 7 feet at the shoulder, with magnificent palmate antlers spanning up to 1.8 meters, or 6 feet across, these forest giants were truly imposing. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements reveals distinctive antler configurations unlike modern European moose populations, suggesting these animals represented a unique genetic lineage that has since disappeared through hunting prey and hybridization with other cervid populations. What made these forest elk particularly remarkable was their coloration and behavior. Unlike modern moose with their uniformly dark coats, Viking era, I've often wondered what it must have been like to encounter a truly massive animal in the ancient forests. Imagine a forest elk, far larger than any moose we know today, with distinctive light patches on its sides and shoulders. These markings weren't just for show, they provided excellent camouflage in the dappled light of the forest. These weren't gentle giants either. Their behavior was reportedly more aggressive than modern moose, especially during the mating season. Instead of simply competing for females, the bulls would actively defend their territories. For the Vikings, these forest elk were a lifeline. A single animal could yield over 500 kilos, or 100 pounds of meat. That's enough to feed a small village for weeks during the harsh northern winters. Their hides, tougher than cattle leather, were prized for shields, boats, and winter clothing, and perhaps most valued were their enormous antlers, transformed by Viking craftsmen into tools, weapons, and even drinking horns for feasts. But by the late Viking Age, these elk populations were already declining. Intensive hunting combined with the clearing of forests for agriculture fragmented their habitat across Scandinavia. As Viking settlements expanded, encounters with these magnificent beasts became increasingly rare, turning them into creatures of the remote wilderness in medieval lore. These forest giants weren't the only creatures shaping Viking survival, though. Deep within Scandinavia's icy rivers swam another unexpected powerhouse, equally valuable and dangerous. While spotting a whale today feels like a rare and wondrous sight for Viking sailors, such encounters often turned into high-stakes battles. Gray whales were a valuable prize, offering meat, oil, and bone. But hunting them meant rowing dangerously close, where a single thrash of the whale's tail could shatter a longship, sending its crew to a cold, watery grave. Unlike most whale species that still inhabit northern seas, the Atlantic gray whale population was driven to complete extinction by the 18th century. During the Viking Age, however, these magnificent marine mammals were abundant, particularly in coastal waters, where their feeding behavior made them both visible and vulnerable. Atlantic gray whales reached lengths of 14 to 15 meters, or 46 to 49 feet, comparable to modern gray whales in the Pacific, and weighed up to 36 tons. That's roughly the size of a Viking longship, a comparison that wouldn't have been lost on Norse seafarers. Their mottled gray coloration, often covered with barnacles and whale lice, gave them a distinctive appearance featured in Norse daeons of sea creatures. What made gray whales unique among the cetaceans Vikings encountered was their feeding strategy. Unlike deep-diving species, gray whales were bottom feeders, plowing the sea floor for small invertebrates and creating massive mud plumes visible from the surface. This habit brought them into shallow coastal waters, precisely where Viking ships operated most frequently. For Norse communities, gray whales represented an extraordinary bounty when successfully hunted. A single whale could yield up to 20 tons of meat and blubber, enough to feed an entire Viking settlement through the harsh northern winter. Archaeological evidence from coastal North settlements shows specialized bone tools designed specifically for processing whale meat, alongside huge cooking pits that could only have been used for creatures of this size. The hunting of gray whales wasn't without peril. Unlike passive species such as the right whale, gray whales were known for their aggressive defense when threatened. They would often charge attacking boats, using their massive flukes to smash wooden vessels to splinters. Norse sagas contain accounts of whaling expeditions ending in disaster when cornered whales fought back, earning them the nickname devilfish among later whalers. What made Atlantic gray whales particularly vulnerable to hunting was their predictable migration patterns and coastal breeding grounds. Each year, they would travel along well-established routes between feeding areas in the north and calving grounds further south. Vikings, with their intimate knowledge of coastal geography, could anticipate these movements and set up ambush points where the whales would be channeled through narrow passages. By the late Viking Age, gray whale populations were already showing signs of depletion in areas of heaviest Norse settlement. The combination of increased whaling efficiency and the species' low reproductive rate, females typically give birth to just one calf every 2 years, set the stage for their eventual disappearance from Atlantic waters. But while Vikings battled colossal whales at sea, their struggles didn't end once they reached dry land. The forests of Britain were home to predators just as fierce and far less predictable. In the late 8th century, when Viking longships first landed on the shores of Britain and Ireland, they entered territories where another formidable predator had long reigned supreme: the British wolf. These wolves, genetically distinct from their Scandinavian cousins, had dominated the British Isles for thousands of years before Norse settlers arrived to carve out new kingdoms. Standing taller than the Honshu wolf of Japan, but smaller than modern timber wolves, British wolves typically reached heights of 70 to 85 centimeters, or 28 to 33 inches, at the shoulder, and weighed between 30 to 45 kilos, or 66 to 99 lb. Their thick, often gray-brown coats were adapted to the damp conditions of the British Isles, with distinctive white markings frequently appearing on their chests, a feature noted in several Viking-era daons. When Vikings first raided Lindisfarne in 793 CE, wolves remained common throughout Britain and Ireland, with packs controlling territories from the Scottish Highlands. I've always been fascinated by the way Vikings interacted with the natural world. It wasn't just about conquest and raiding, it was about adapting to new environments and understanding the creatures that lived there. The archaeological evidence tells a clear story. When the Vikings arrived in the British Isles, they quickly started hunting wolves. For these newcomers, wolves were a complex problem. On one hand, they threatened livestock, especially sheep, which were vital to the Norse economy in places like the Orkneys and Hebrides. On the other hand, Viking warriors respected the wolf's hunting skills and pack coordination, qualities they admired in battle. This complex relationship is still visible today in Norse place names across former Viking territories in Britain. Places like Ulvedale, Wolf Valley in Cumbria, and Wolf Hill in Perthshire all mark areas where Norse settlers frequently encountered these predators. I find it particularly striking that Viking-era runestones discovered in northern England depict wolf hunts. It suggests that these dangerous pursuits held ceremonial significance for warriors proving their prowess in new lands. Over time, as Norse settlers integrated with local populations, they adopted and transformed Celtic wolf myths into their own traditions. The connection between wolf and warrior grew even stronger, with berserkers sometimes described as wearing wolf pelts. The ultimate fate of British wolves, however, was sealed not by the Vikings themselves, but by their descendants. As Norse settlements evolved into medieval kingdoms, systematic wolf extermination became policy. While the process began during the Viking Age, it accelerated afterward. The last wolves in England were gone by the 15th century, and Scotland's final wolves hung on until the 17th century. Ireland's last wolf was reportedly killed in 1786, marking the end of a predator lineage that had witnessed centuries of change, from the first Celtic settlers to the Viking invasions and beyond. But wolves weren't the only remarkable creatures the Vikings encountered. There were also the armored leviathans lurking beneath the rivers and coastal waters of northern Europe, the Atlantic and Baltic sturgeons. These living fossils, largely unchanged for over 200 million years, once dominated the waterways of Viking territories. The Baltic sturgeon in particular reached truly massive sizes. Females could grow up to 10 feet long and weigh over 660 pounds. With their bony plates and elongated armor-plated snouts, they were unmistakable among European fish species. Their immense size made them noteworthy enough to feature in regional sagas. Several Norse tales mention heroes who wrestled these armored river dragons. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements even reveals specialized sturgeon spears with detachable heads, designed to penetrate the fish's tough exterior. It's a testament to how important these catches were to Viking fishermen. Beyond their meat, sturgeons offered multiple valuable resources. Their swim bladders were processed into isinglass, used for clarifying beer and wine, as well as making a powerful adhesive. Their cartilaginous skeletons, when boiled, produced a gelatin used in Viking medicine for joint ailments. And most prized of all was sturgeon roe, caviar, which became a delicacy reserved for jarls and kings. Sadly, by the late Viking Age, sturgeon populations were already in decline in heavily settled areas. Their slow reproduction made them vulnerable to overfishing. Predictable spawning runs and their habit of basking near the surface made them easy targets. In the medieval period, dams blocked spawning routes and pollution worsened their plight. By the 18th century, Baltic sturgeon had grown so rare that Scandinavian monarchs claimed them as royal property, a protection that tragically came too late to save them. As the Vikings turned their sights inland, the armored giants of the rivers gave way to shaggy titans of the forest, the European bison and its forest-dwelling cousin, the wisent. These European relatives were specifically adapted to the dense mixed forests that once covered much of northern and eastern Europe. Standing up to 6.2 feet at the shoulder and weighing over 2,000 pounds, the European bison was the heaviest land animal in Europe during the Viking Age. Bulls developed massive shoulder humps covered with shaggy dark brown fur that contrasted with the lighter coat on their lower bodies. These woodland giants could navigate between trees with surprising agility, using their powerful bodies to create paths through the densest undergrowth. These natural trails, maintained over generations, became known to Vikings as bison roads. They were reliable routes through otherwise impenetrable forests that human travelers would follow. For Viking communities pushing into new territories, these massive herbivores represented both opportunity and challenge. A successful bison hunt could provide meat for an entire village for weeks, along with hides thick enough to stop arrows, making them prized material for shields and winter clothing. The distinctive hump contained concentrated fat reserves that produced high-quality oil for lamps and waterproofing. Hunting these forest behemoths, however, was extraordinarily dangerous. Unlike deer or smaller game, wounded bison would typically. The world the Vikings knew was already vanishing even as they sailed. The creatures that had defined their landscapes were fading into memory, pushed to extinction. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? That the very expansion that defined their age also contributed to the loss of the world they knew. Consider the European bison. These weren't creatures to be trifled with. Capable of reaching speeds of 40 kilometers an hour, even through dense woodland, their sheer size and power meant that a single charge could easily kill multiple hunters. Norse sagas even contain accounts of entire hunting parties being destroyed by enraged bulls. By the late Viking Age, European bison populations were already in decline across much of their former range. The combination of intensive hunting and forest clearing for agriculture pushed these magnificent animals into increasingly isolated pockets. Unlike the aurochs, however, the European bison narrowly escaped complete extinction. A small population survived in the Białowieża forest between Poland and Belarus, where approximately 7,000 descendants live today. They represent the last direct link to the forest giants Vikings once hunted. The same human expansion and climate changes that fueled the Viking Age also led to their decline.